you know I love shoes and you love me, so write it for me. So that's what I ended up doing, and I dedicated the book to her, my sister. She's my best friend.
This is the Book of Life. I'm Heidi Rabinowitz. Suzanne Nelson won a Sidney Taylor Honor Award for her teen novel Serendipity's Footsteps. I bumped into her in a breezy hotel courtyard during the 2016 Association of Jewish Libraries conference in Charleston, South Carolina, so I grabbed her for a quick interview. That setting explains the background noises you'll hear of wind and a few sirens on the street nearby, but luckily they don't really interfere with the interview. Suzanne has a special offer for you. Listen as she tells you in her own words.
Hi, this is Suzanne Nelson, author of the teen novel Serendipity's Footsteps. I'll be joining you soon on the Book of Life, and I've got a special offer for you. Become a patron of the Book of Life podcast, and I'll send you an autographed library edition of Serendipity's Footsteps while supplies last. Go to patreon.com/Book of Life. That's patreon.com/Book of Life to sign up. I can't wait for you to read my book.
Okay, so I'm here with Suzanne Nelson, author of Serendipity's Footsteps, which got a silver medal in the Sidney Taylor Book Awards this year in 2016. So tell me about the book.
The book is a blend of historical fiction and contemporary fiction. It is the story of a single special pair of shoes and how they connect the lives of three young women across generations. It begins with Dahlia in Berlin, and it starts on Kristallnacht. She has made these shoes. They're supposed to be her wedding shoes, but the Nazis come, and she has to leave them behind, and her entire family gets interned at Sachsenhausen concentration camp. Ultimately, she leaves the shoes, she loses everything. She has to travel to New York as a refugee. And her story in particular is one of her struggle with finding her identity again. The family that takes her in is not Jewish. She's faced with a lot of difficult decisions about what she's going to do with her culture and her faith now that she's lost her whole family. The shoes have a journey of their own. They pass through a series of people, and you see how the shoes touch their lives over the course of the novel, and in particular, the lives of the two other main characters, Ray and Penny. Penny is a young woman who was born with Down syndrome, and she loves shoes because her mother was really obsessed with them. Her story is one of struggling against the constraints that have boxed her in. She's an orphan. The social worker feels that she has all these limitations and she should work in a fast food restaurant, which she hates the idea of. She really wants to work with shoes. She is a photographer. She loves taking pictures of shoes, and whenever she sees anyone wearing interesting shoes, she wants to know the story of the shoes. Ray is also an orphan at the same orphanage. Penny constantly wants to be her friend, but Ray is very abrasive. She's had a very, very difficult childhood, and she doesn't really know how to accept love and friendship. The shoes ultimately pass through their lives too, and the book becomes a journey of those two girls and the shoes and how ultimately it all connects back to Dahlia.
So this is an unusual concept of shoes connecting people across time. So where did you come up with that? What was your inspiration?
The idea for the shoes actually came from my sister. She's my best friend, and she is completely obsessed with shoes. I'm not. I confess that. I do have a few really special pairs, but her closet is chock full. So I happened to be driving around my hometown of Ridgefield, Connecticut, and there was a single red slingback high heel that was on a boulder in front of a little cottage in my town. Every day I would pass it, and oftentimes I would be on the phone talking to her because during that time of day we're always dropping our children off at school and running errands, and so that's our time to connect. And I kept mentioning these shoes to her, saying, they've been on this boulder for months in rain and sleet and beating down sun. What was that shoe doing there? And it was literally 5 feet from the front door of this house, and I could not figure out why someone would leave this shoe there. So she said, I see shoes like that all the time on the side of the road and hanging from trees, and I always wonder what their stories are. At which point she said, oh my gosh, you need to write a story about those shoes. That really got the wheels turning because I have many, many friends who are Jewish and have shared extremely moving and emotional testimonies of their family's experiences with the Holocaust with me. It really touched something deeply in me, and I was able to think about this young girl in Germany making this one pair of shoes. That was what really started the story. And then I knew immediately that it was going to be a story that alternated points of view and that jumped back and forth in time. That was a really challenging thing to take on. I said, I don't know if I'm capable of doing that. And she just said, well, don't worry about that right now. I love shoes and you love me, so write it for me. So that's what I ended up doing, and I dedicated the book to her. And in the author's note, I actually talk about the connections that I had that inspired me to write Dahlia's story. One of my very, very close friends shared some really personal stories with me about her grandparents. And one of the things that really struck me was what it would take, the bravery it would take to move on from this crushing, horrible experience, to lose everything but still be able to rise up afterwards and find yourself again. And then the other thing is that I actually tutored a little boy when I was in high school who was born with Down syndrome. He was 3 at the time. And that really helped me inspire Penny's story. And I've stayed in touch with his family for years, the whole time I was growing up. I interviewed his mother when I was researching Down syndrome for the book, and I learned that he's in his 20s now, and he actually runs his own business on Etsy called Doodle Duck Design. And so he's really made this incredible life for himself. It was very moving to speak to her and learn more about the challenges she's faced as a mother, trying to find a place for him where he really felt like he belonged and felt fulfillment in what he was doing, which I think is a very big challenge for people with special needs across America right now, because a lot of times they're boxed in with the jobs that they're offered. That was part of Penny's story, was her finding her own way and her identity and having the strength to say, no, I want more than what I'm being offered, and I'm going to find a way to get it.
All right, excellent. Were you aware of the Sidney Taylor Book Awards before you won?
Vaguely, because I was a children's book editor for 8 years, so I knew of them. But one of my biggest fears when I was writing the novel was portraying Dahlia's story in an authentic and accurate way. And if I was really doing it in a way that was respectful and honoring the traditions of Jewish people. When I was told that I received an honor for the book, it was very emotional for me. I have so many friends who are Jewish. My editor at Random House is Jewish, one of my best friends, and I just felt really glad and relieved that I had been able to tell this story that I don't necessarily have ownership of, but I feel the need to share. As my editor said when I was telling her about all my fears in writing Dahlia's character, she said to me, well, if we can't tell each other's stories, then how will we ever be able to develop empathy for one another and go on to share those stories with future generations? And I really feel that that's important for every writer, every reader, everyone.
Give us a little context about yourself as an author. What else have you written? What else are you planning to write?
I do a series of books for Scholastic that are for middle grade readers, and they're very different from my historical fiction. I have a split personality as a writer, I think. I write middle grade baking foodie romance books is what we like to call them. They all have really fun names. So the first one in the series is Cake Pop Crush, and then there's Macarons at Midnight, Hot Cocoa Hearts, yeah.
Cute.
Yeah, so they're very fun, they're very light, they're very plot-driven. I love writing them, and I love hearing from the readers in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade saying, I hate reading. I never read. And I picked up your book and I finished it in a day and I can't wait to get the next one. And that's why I write. It's to reach people and touch them in those ways.
So you said you had worked as a children's book editor and now you're an author, so you've been in different areas of the business. Does that help you as an author, or how does it inform your work?
It definitely helps. I was an editor for 8 years, and I think I can safely say that I would not have been a published author. I was always writing the entire time I was editing. I was writing from the time I was in second grade. I knew that that was what I wanted to do. I can't say that I was always writing things that other people would want to read. When I became an editorial assistant and I started working on other people's stories and I started just immersing myself in the world of children's literature, it was very eye-opening. It gave me the opportunity to really see that not only do you have to write something that you're passionate about, but you have to write something that other people want to read and that is marketable. So that was a big learning experience, and helping other authors revising their work was very educational. Being an editor really was an incredible experience, and I enjoyed every minute of it.
Is there anything I haven't thought to ask you that you would like to talk about?
I do a number of giveaways on my Facebook page, on Instagram, and on my website. I give away signed copies of Serendipity's Footsteps. I give away signed copies of my foodie romance books. So if you follow me on Instagram, it's Suzanne Nelson Books. You can look me up on Facebook. It's Suzanne Nelson Author. And my website is www.suzannenelson.com.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much for talking to me.
Thank you.
This is Keith Fenton Miller, author of Casper Mutzenmacher's Cursed Hat. I'll be joining you soon on the Book of Life podcast. I'd like to dedicate my episode to my grandfather, Dr. Merle Fenton, because he inspired the Casper character.
If you enjoy the Book of Life podcast, please become a patron at patreon.com/bookoflife. If you do, you'll get an autographed copy of Serendipity's Footsteps by Suzanne Nelson, while supplies last. You can also help us out by leaving a review on iTunes or a comment on our blog at bookoflifepodcast.com. You can like our page at facebook.com/bookoflifepodcast, or follow us at twitter.com/bookoflifepod. Email us at bookoflifepodcast@gmail.com, or leave us a voicemail at 561-206-2473. The Book of Life is a podcast service of the Feldman Library at Congregation B'nai Israel in Boca Raton, Florida, at cbiboca.org, and is supported in part by the Association of Jewish Libraries at jewishlibraries.org. Our background music is provided by the Freilach Makers Klezmer String Band. Thanks for listening, and happy reading. Incidental music in today's episode provided by bensound.com.